So there's two. There is DAWNTRAIL in the new era of FFXIV, and then there's also chat bubbles confirmed. Yeah. Let's start with the media tour video.
If I can have one little personal question. I asked you at FanFest if we would see chat bubbles in the future. And you said yes.
You said yes. You're gonna hold him to it.
Actually, we've already prepared samples for testing.
この一言だけで多分世界中に衝撃が走るのでここまでにしといてもらっていい
I think just this utterance alone has sent shockwaves throughout the world, so let's leave it here.
今度はぜひ食事をしながらワインを飲みつつもっと長い時間ぜひディスカッションさせてください
I think next time definitely let's go out for a meal, drink some wine and have a discussion then.
Finally, the chat bubbles are confirmed. I got to go on the FF14 media tour. I got to play the Pictomancer. I got to make a Femheroth. I got to go on the FF14 media tour. I got to play the Pictomancer. I got to make a Femheroth. I got to play the Viper. I got to see all the new zones. And more importantly than that, I was given permission to have some one-on-one time with Yoshi-P.
Let's see.
So come along, friends.
Tell me about your media tour time, Mike. I'm excited. I'm so excited.
Hey, DAWNTRAIL's coming the 2nd of July. It was amazing to be invited onto the media tour. I'm sorry for the deception over the last few months. It is the way it works. I have never been invited to the Final Fantasy XIV media tour before. I hadn't joined the game at that point when the last one was going with Endwalker, and my god, is it crazy. It's so different than everything I've done in the past, especially the secrecy surrounding it, and it was really weird because...
So this was my first media tour in person. The only media tour that I've been to before this was the one for Endwalker. And that was really exciting for me because I got to see the Bun Boys. But that was remote because of COVID. And I wasn't a big enough creator yet for the Shadowbringers one or Stormblood, or before that. So for me, the Endwalker media tour was the only reference point that I had about how the media tour works before this one, and it was remote. And I gotta say, it felt completely different because it's a whole it's a whole other enchilada to go in person. Oh wow, nice emo, good.
Everybody knows that the people are on the media tour. There was even an advertisement that Yoshi-P was going to be in Potsdam, Germany. There was a raffle to go and meet him, and people were like, well, the media tour is obviously in Germany on these dates. And then I had to disappear. So we faked a kidnapping. Because we can't use them in the Darkest Dungeon anymore. Do you know what I mean? Go on, you. Hey! What the fuck? But it was amazing.
That's good. I mean, we weren't worried or anything. I told everybody, don't worry so much about Mike. Just because he got kidnapped doesn't mean that anybody needs to go looking for him. You know, I'm sure he's going to be fine. That's what I told everybody. So I'll remember that for next time.
I'm so grateful that I got this opportunity. I can't wait to talk to you guys.
I'm glad you're fine. See, I told y'all it was going to work out.
I was granted the ability to... In total, I spent like an hour alone with Yoshi-P, talking about all kinds of things. We'll get there, because it was so cool. It was so cool. So how does the media tour work with Final Fantasy XIV? Certainly in comparison to what I've done for like Path of Exile, for Blizzard, for ArenaNet, and all these other major companies. They take it very seriously, and they want to, apparently part of the bidding process for like, because it's Europe, right? It could be anywhere in Europe, and they have teams everywhere, is who can find the best theme that fits the expansion. So similar to what like Blizzard did for Dragonflight, where they put us in like Dragonflight Castle, this one was like in the Biosphere. I'm going to say it wrong because that sounds like Biosphere to us in the UK, but actually it's bioatmosphere is what it translates to, because I was very disappointed when we got there and it wasn't a sphere. I'm like, this is not a sphere. It's bioatmosphere. And the reason we did that is it's jungle themed. So what's really strange is that obviously Yoshida and Foxclon and everyone else are people that a very niche part of the world would give anything to meet. And I've seen people break down in tears just in the presence of Yoshi-P. And if you're a...
Imagine freaking out around Yoshi-P. Like, come on. Like, it's all that... He's just a guy, okay? There's no reason to lose your composure just because Yoshi-P is standing right next to you.
Germany that day, Yoshi-P could very easily have just been in the
Who
submarine.
would do that?
Apparently, if you follow the ducks, you might get led to Yoshi-P, as they put us in this big room with security and everything, so nobody knew what was going on in there in this simple zoo-like area where it was taking place. But it was awesome. It was awesome. I joked on the coach ride there with the rest of the content creators because I met some... I love this stuff. I know it's a privilege. I really do. But I met some amazing people. Wait. But it was awesome. It was awesome. I joked on the coach ride there with the rest of the content creators because I met some... I love this stuff.
Hey,
I know
Jordan!
It's a privilege. I really do. But I met some amazing people. Some quick pictures here of what we saw. I will point out it is under such lockdown that we could not take many pictures there. They did ease up later and they were like, look, you are under strict embargo. There was a really cool presentation by Yoshi-P where we will, which was all things that had been revealed in the live letter. It wasn't really anything new.
Man, I wish I could go to both. There's so many cool people at NA and there's so many cool people at EU. I'm ready to see, and like, I feel like I'm torn between these two sides, you know, because I think last time I was in the EU,
they were like, no pictures. You can't take any pictures of this. You can't do anything. It was like, okay, it's very secure.
I go to
lockdown.
EU
We
Fan
all had
Fest,
press passes.
so...
Here we go. There's my special one. Hey.
Okay.
And if you didn't have this, you were not getting into that room. It was not happening at all. It was pretty cool. But they joked that, we're probably having tacos for lunch. And they're like, yeah, we're absolutely having tacos for lunch. This is full DAWNTRAIL themed. So they gave us the full mix. So what happens? So we met up the night before. I got there pretty late, like 6 p.m. or something like that. We had some dinner together, and then it was time. We got on this coach, which was super fun. We've got a couple of pictures there. And then it was off to the biosphere. I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's okay. And then we got into the room, and shortly after that, Yoshi-P came out with his translator header and gave us a mini live letter, essentially, on stage with a presentation, explained what was DAWNTRAIL's goals and missions. There were some really cool things in here that we touched on in the interview, and then told us what we were going to be doing that day. And more importantly, you're not going to believe this, they gave me papers, like a real Yoshi-P papers. Look at this. I have actual papers. I feel live letter style, man.
They wouldn't let us take those. What the heck? So they gave us that too. And I'm sitting next to Jesse Cox. And Jesse's like, can we keep these? And I'm like, I don't know, but don't ask. You know, because I say, Jesse, obviously we want to keep these. But it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. So don't ask. And Jesse looks at me like, oh, I don't know. And, he flags down a worker and he says, excuse me, can we keep these books? And the worker says, no, you can't. And I'm like, I turned to Jesse and I'm like, well, Jesse looks at me and he says, well, I've learned an important life lesson here today. And the worker's like, what life lesson? He's like, oh no, nothing. So, and I'm like,
I've got papers. They let me keep it.
No, we can't
which
keep
was
it.
awesome. In here was really cool. This actually has a basic play guide.
The life lesson is it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
For like how to play the Viper. So they gave you all these screenshots and pictures of how to play Viper. They did the same with Pictomancer. So there was a lot of...
They did, but it's like there was a bunch more pages for explaining how to play Viper. And in the end, I didn't need it because I just pressed the shiny buttons. And then there was like a couple of pages on Picto that were like, didn't really help me that much at all to understand.
People there who maybe more story focused. And so like you know, gameplay nerding out, which is what I like.
I read it and I still couldn't figure it out, even with help
to get you going, so you can enjoy the Viper.
I have figured it out now. By the way, my Pictomancer explainer video should be live on the channel very, very soon. Very soon.
And play it around.
I might just... Yeah, okay.
So the demo we got, few things about the footage you're going to see, guys, is that because of the Ukraine-Russian conflict, we were playing on the Japanese servers, but they had to route it through America. So you are going to notice some like weird lag, spell cancellation, things like that happening. A big example of this would be like trying to swift cast something. You had to like swift cast, wait, and then do it. It took a while for my fingers to adjust to that. So if anything looks a little odd in that regard, that's what it is, right? It's mostly lag and mostly the fact that you're picking up a level 100 job, and you've got a couple of hours to play. They did give us all day, but there was a lot to play. So it was
pretty much everybody's media tour footage that I've seen. Maybe not like some of the best top gamers, but most people's media tour footage is like you're gonna see footage of people trying to learn these jobs, and it's rough. Like, I think for me, I have so much like hilarious Pepe Ga footage from Picto, and where you're just gonna see me making literally every mistake. I think in our Viper video, there is one point where I'm trying to figure out what the boss does. Like, I'm looking at the boss mechanics, and I'm just standing there. Like, I'm not even pressing any buttons. I'm just running around.
Like a couple of hours of Viper, a couple of hours of Pictomancer, a couple of hours of other things, and then you wanted to explore. The demo we got is very sanitized. Do not worry about spoilers, because they really cared about us having spoilers. There is zero story, and in fact, a huge amount of the like NPCs that would usually be in the zones in DAWNTRAIL were just flat out removed, and the ones that remained, I did go and scout around, literally had one line of dialogue, which is like, welcome to Tyrell. That was
welcome to Tyrell.
That was all they said. I had to look around.
I am glad, because I actually did get spoiled on the last media tour. For the Endwalker media tour, they took us into a dungeon. The dungeon was the Tower of Zot, I think. And
how DRG feels.
Hey, Fail Quail, thank you for the 2 years of support. That's a big milestone. Thank you so much for that. But yeah, for the Tower of Zot test for the Endwalker media tour, you get in there and immediately an NPC is like, oh, hey, it's time to blah, 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 blah. And it explains exactly why we're there. And it was a massive spoiler of a thing that had happened at that point. And, yes, it's like, we got to save someone, and here's who. Oh, God. And so that was, I'm glad we didn't have that situation.
But it was gorgeous. It was beautiful. It's going to look a little bare. Don't be like, oh, wow, there's nothing in these zones. No, they took everything out. They wanted us to explore, have a look around at the scenery, and check the graphic updates and things like that. One of the biggest things that was really interesting, and this is apparently from the Western audience specifically, I found this hilarious, is because Yoshi-P brought this up specifically, and then later on, the team, the Square Enix team, came around and asked us our opinion on this. One of the biggest pieces of feedback they've had about DAWNTRAIL, it's got double die system we'll get to, it's got new jobs, it's got a brand new big graphical update. The login screen's too bright for the West.
It's so flashbang.
They came around and Yoshi was like, will you please just like AFK on the screen for a while until the intro plays, and then you get the full effect of the login screen happening?
You're getting flashbanged
and I was laughing. I was like, really? That's the big feedback from the West, is the login screen is too bright. However,
it is bright.
When they came around, they're like, Mike, have you seen the login screen yet? I'm like, yeah. They're like, can you give us feedback on it? I was like, here's the thing. In the room we were playing in, which was very well lit, it was fine. It was absolutely fine. But then I thought, wait a minute. I've seen screenshots, videos of thousands of people's setups at home, and a lot of people
we live in
West
caves.
Playing like a dungeon cave type
people.
environment, like no sunlight, nothing, like lights off.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, a lot of guys I know do play like real life on dark mode. So yeah, it probably is too bright for those guys, because I know when anything really bright pops on my screen and I'm in a dark room, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, right? We turn every website to dark mode to counteract that. You know, if you see someone using light mode in the West, you're like, why are you using light mode? That's really strange. So yeah, probably, actually, now I think about it, it probably is a little bit too, a little bit too bright, which was really interesting. So
Zepper, are you gonna watch Jesse's video? Yes. I'm settled in for a long day today, y'all. So yeah, we lots of videos to watch today. What I was about to say. I think like I've done it where I lived in I have put my gaming setup in a cave room and I had it complete darkness at all times. And this is, in my experience, not great for my mental health. I have seen myself become depressed in this situation. Does it make the screen look beautiful? Yes. But here's another way, like just, you know, now that I've moved the setup into a little bit of a brighter spot, I do feel like less depressed because there is some sunlight getting into my eyes a little bit. Yeah. So it kind of it's good to have at least some natural light coming into your room for your the sake of your mental health. And if you, I mean, you can also play at night. That's an option.
That's what it is. Okay. First things first. Let's look at like the biggest before we get to a lot of details.
Is it true that it's not great for your eyes in the long term? Oh, I didn't know that. So being in a dark cave room for gaming is bad for your eyes? Oh my god. I didn't know that.
Detail with the interviews because I know you're waiting for that. Let's look at the biggest upgrade to DAWNTRAIL, which is the double die system. I had to jump in straight
double
away
dies.
to this, the double die system is a very
I made a whole video about this.
Big deal to a huge amount of people, including myself.
I've showcased every single job armor and how it dies
with glam quite a lot.
With the double dies.
Works quite well. I will say some of the menu was in Japanese, and some of the people that we had with us couldn't speak Japanese, but it worked super simple. It actually didn't go through tons of menus to make it work.
Was I the only one that made the video where I showed the 2 dies for every single job armor? Well, it took me like an hour or 2 to do that, so I'm not surprised. Like, I imagine that most people would want to spend that time looking at the jobs, but I decided to sacrifice looking at all of the jobs and dedicate the time to G-pose for y'all.
Now, we didn't actually have the ability to glam our characters there. We could recreate our own character. Of course, first things first, the floor inspector must rise to the top. But we couldn't actually glam our...
And by the way, I know I'm pausing him a lot, but another thing that I wanted to say about that video, the job armor video, I was shook by how good some of those armors look in the game, like in G-Pose, because I've seen screenshots of them before. I've seen the renders on the DAWNTRAIL site, but looking at them in G-Pose and seeing how the light shines off of the metallic parts and like the sheer materials on, for example, like the dancer armor, it's gorgeous. It is so, so pretty. You just have to see it for yourself in the game.
What we could do is use the preview system. So we could, you know, make the glam plate, but just not apply it to our characters, which was fine. And the double die system works in there. Works super easily. In fact, it's got a nice function of just being able to save what you did as a theme. So if you chose like black and red or whatever it might be, it would remember that. So if you did it on your chest,
so what's going to be the second crawler's color?
Like, do you want to just apply the same thing? I would love obviously an apply all function. So if you chose a color scheme that you want for your character, it would just do it to all your armor. That might be there. Again, I was like, what is this button doing? Like, I'm not sure. It does look though. I can't confirm this. I wanted to talk to Yoshi-P.
The die video is out. I posted it immediately, so yeah.
But they like kicked us out.
It was out straight away.
Again, I'll get there. It looks like you might be able to save presets. So if you have a variety of color schemes that you want to apply to your character, it's like, oh, usually I roll black and red, but now I want to go blue and gold. That maybe it might save those color swatches so you can create like a palette of things you want to do. I'm not confirming that by any means, but it looked like the functionality might be there to enable you to do that. But as I said, I was planning to talk to Yoshi-P about it, but we did get off track.
A living, breathing world that we're supposed to be in, and things should matter. Although I don't agree with their use of Lalafels as raid markers.
本当に生きる世界のところに住むっていう体験できますけど、ララフェルをレードマーカーに使うのはちょっとどう
Reminder, Lala abuse is never okay. All right. The next thing I want to do is explore the zones. I really would. I would love to pronounce to you the names of these zones, but
It's hard to say the names.
Not
I know.
easy, man. They're really not easy. They're in my notes. They're in my cool binder because they gave us all the descriptions of the zones.
Yeah, it tells you how to pronounce.
They're pretty tricky. I get why they've done it because it's the theme of a new land, new adventure. But they're like Kazama Uka, I believe, is one of the places. The dungeon in particular that you're going to be seeing shortly. In the notes in the binder. It says that the working title is Jungle Cruise, is what they're calling it. However, on the very next page, they actually have the real name of the dungeon. Now, this might be the Japanese name, but none of us could pronounce it, including some of the staff that were there. It's Ihyuka Katsumu.
That sounds right.
So I'm just going to say the new zones.
Just say it however you're going to say it, but say it with confidence, because that's what we all did with Bajja. Like, you'll see, I think every content creator is saying Bajja differently. Some people are like Bosnia. Some people are Bozia. Some people say Boja. And it doesn't matter. Just say it with confidence, and then people will think that you're the one who's right. Just be the most confident.
New zones. I went and explored the new zones and was looking around to see what was going on. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It actually allayed a lot of my concerns as a streamer, in that too much vegetation and stuff actually makes the stream look bad, and it can actually be a bit of a problem these days. It's like, oh, the zone is full of clutter of trees and branches and bushes and things.
Special Agent Sky says that, for context, his community reenacted his leveling experience through roleplay at the FC house, and they used Lalafels as raid markers. So that is why. Okay, I get it.
Well, actually, it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be from the previews we've seen in the live letters. It is beautiful. Waterfalls coming from everywhere. It's exactly what you're going to expect from the big Yoshi smirk about the whole thing was that DAWNTRAIL is a wonderful vacation from the horrors and nightmares that we usually see. And that's the zones they let us see. We didn't get Solution 9. They gave us 2 zones and the main city. And yeah, it's all very pretty and beautiful.
It's like a paradise.
But there was always a little wink and a nod when they were saying that, because obviously things are going to go absolutely horrible. But it was cool to see. It was very pretty. So next thing, gameplay, obviously. I wanted to start with Pictomancer. Pictomancer, from its announcement, was the the job that I wanted to play at the start of DAWNTRAIL. I'm not going to be doing the MSQ for a while, because that's just a streamer thing. People want to enjoy the MSQ first, and then they'll be happy to watch along with a streamer. So for me, I always leave a delay in content, so people can go and enjoy the MSQ and things at their own pace, and then I'll jump in later. I'm fine with being patient on that. So what I wanted to do was jump in with Pictomancer, play around with that story, level it up, and then in a week or so's time, jump into the MSQ.
Use your dash!
So Pictomancer, from the previous combat live...
Oh my god. My dancer brain is like exploding right now.
Live letter that we got.
Was it on cooldown? Was it on cooldown?
And then I'll jump in later. I'm fine with being patient on that. So what I wanted to do was jump in with Pictomancer, play around with that story, level it up, and then in a week or so...
Oh, yeah. He's trying to press it, but he can't. It's on cooldown. I see he's like, he's smashing that button, but he can't.
The MSQ.
So then he sprint, but it's still a little late.
Pictomancer, from the previous combat live letter that we got, looked a little weird in how it played out. So I was very curious to see how...
Oh, I'm so curious to hear what he thinks.
The general theme of what this is you have these 3 canvases, and then you paint on a picture, which then sets up a bunch of attacks. So you paint like an animal, so that'll be something like a bat or a Moogle, and then you get the Moogle and bat attacks. You'll paint the hammer, which then unlocks the ability, and then I
can already see there's confusion about when to cast the hammer. Because I see that you just use your burst.
You have this cast where you paint them onto the canvas.
Yes.
You set up the ability, right? Then you render that image. And then once you've rendered the image into the real world, then you can utilize it in some way. So think of it like a 3-step process. Paint the image, create the image in the real world, utilize it in some way. That's the general process of how this works.
Our video should be up within the next
actual stuff
half hour,
with
hour.
The paints, like the actual paint attacks where you'll see like Blizzard and Cyan and things like that, which go around the little palette icon. That's more your filler stuff. And the orbs it generates, after you do a certain amount, you'll create these little orbs that go around the side of the palette. It's like 7 of them. These are more like abilities you'll cast on the move off as little fillers here and there, because they do a lot less damage, but You can fire them off straight away.
Hammer,
so no big deal there. But the main bulk of your attacks comes from the things you've painted, and those are limited by charges.
Bonking
good.
good.
Obviously, my feedback on this was that I had a lot of fun. It's visually astonishing. You know, it feels like you're playing Super Mario World. It's very cartoony, and that's fun. It's really goofy and
like
fun,
Super
and
Mario
they've
World.
clearly put so much
Paper
work
Mario,
into the effort. But gameplay-wise, I did have a couple of concerns with it. And Square Enix is clearly aware of this problem. Painting the images onto the canvas, which is the step one of the process, with you get animal, you get a weapon, and you get a landscape, is quite a long cast. It's on the characters we played, it was 3.8 seconds, right? So obviously that'll be adjusted by gear, I imagine. But it was 3.8 seconds, so we'll call it 4 for the sake of argument. That's a really long time when you're in combat, especially as bosses get more complex, right? So you'll see in the dungeon, this is the first ever run I did of the dungeon. So
you can see he's still learning because he's trying to hard cast Rainbow.
By a few things, it is what it is. I'm still
just
learning the rotation. You'll occasionally see me still like reading over tooltips while I'm still
That's
sort
what
of
everybody's doing in their footage.
Fully forming the picture of how Pictomancer works. So
this is not like representative.
They're clearly
of how to
aware
play.
that this is not that fun and kind of a problem. So what they've done is they've made it so that if you're not in combat, these 3 pictures that you need to paint are instant cast, as long as you're out of combat. And that in dungeons works really well, because you kill trash pack, you can instantly just reform all the canvases so that once you get into the next trash pack...
Yeah, unless you pull the next trash pack before you remembered to cast your motifs instantly out of combat, and now you're in combat and you can't cast them instantly, and now you need to cast them.
You're ready to go with your massive...
This, as a very forgetful person, this was very, very frustrating for me, because you better remember to do an instant cast when you can.
Burst damage, right? That comes from utilize the weapons.
When
you're in boss fights, though, you do have to hard cast these spells, and you notice that, like, I kind of have to stand here for nearly 4 seconds because you can't do it on the move.
Right.
You can swift cast it. This is where my issue with the lag came up, because I remember I was talking to Scripe and I was like, it's weird, we can't swift cast the paintings to reapply the hammer. And he's like, that's really weird. But it actually turned out to be the lag. Like, I played for a while without getting the swift cast off, realizing you needed to do quite a delay to make it work. So bear that in mind. But you can swift cast one of them, which takes the total cast time of all 3 spells from 11 and a bit seconds to 8 and a bit, just under 8. But it is noticeable, and it's not very fun. That was the bit I was a little like, it's kind of a drag when
you need to plan, basically.
Stand there and do these casts. I know in FF14 some people are used to longer cast times, so it's not too bad. It was just noticeable. Certainly.
So basically, the cast for your motifs is long, and it doesn't do damage. And so you need to plan out when you are going to do these casts, or when you'll swift cast these casts. And this is actually something that I think is going to be very interesting to figure out on a fight-per-fight basis, because you're setting yourself up for future success by doing this. And there's definitely going to be times where it will not be a smart idea to cast your motifs. And that is, I think, good. Like, having these potential failure states with your job is going to leave some room for some fun optimizations.
Compared to the Viper, which we'll get to next. The other thing that I noticed is that DAWNTRAIL's made a big effort in job redesign to reduce the amount of button blow, because there are lots of jobs in FF14 which have been changed now for the most part that go 1, 2, 3. So you press 1, which makes 2 do something. So you press 2, and then that makes 3 do something, and you kind of cycle backwards and forwards. And they've obviously internally gone, why don't we just have this be one button that just changes into, instead of having 3 keybinds, why is it not just 1? So you press 1 and that changes into what 2 should be. And then you press that and then that changes into what 3 would be.
What a good idea.
Great.
I wonder where they got that idea
from.
from.
There are lots of jobs in Final Fantasy XIV that work that way. You press 1 to begin a process.
It was a pretty good idea.
Because they need to limit the amount of attacks you can do with the, say, weapon. The hammer is the best example here. Because it's very powerful, it's very strong, and they don't want you to just be going like, hammer attack, redraw hammer attack, redraw hammer. So they've limited it with charges, which is where your filler spell comes in. They've had to use 3 separate key bindings to make the hammer work. So you have draw hammer, which you can press once, and then that's grayed out because you've drawn the hammer. Then you have activate and render the hammer, which is on the charge system. And then you have a third key binding, which is actually to attack with the hammer. So you end up with these 3 key bindings, and this applies to the other ones as well for the most part. And so what I ended up doing with my key bindings is I was trying to like make my muscle memory work as much as possible. Is I just was like, okay, we'll make hammer 3 to draw, shift 3 to render, and alt 3. So 3 was my hammer, and then I did the same for 2 and stuff like that. And it still feels a little clunky for me. Is like 3
At
separate
first,
buttons
it did
to just
feel
deal
clunky.
with one aspect of the job. But these are kind of nitpick.
But you have to, it felt clunky to me at first before I understood how everything's supposed to fit together. I will say that.
Once you muscle memory kicked in, it was totally fine. It was absolutely fine. It was just one of those things that I noticed is like, this could maybe be consolidated. Is there a reason that, because if I draw the hammer, I can't redraw it, so why doesn't that change to render the hammer at that point? And then that could be on a charge system that's waiting, right? But I assume they want you to be able to always be aware of how many charges there are. So I get why they're at this situation. It just feels like it could be polished up a little bit. But gameplay-wise, once you got going, and certainly for packs, it's super fun. Like, your character's swinging around like Mario Rabbids or something like that, smashing things to pieces. Doing all that. Realm would be
hammer is
proud
amazing.
of the Pictomancer they've created. And
Hammer,
also there's a lot of scope
my
here to
favorite
create new
button
things.
by far. The hammer always does critical direct hits. You bonk 3 times in a row. It's like a triple cast, but it's also like a fell cleave. It feels amazing. This button is so good.
Let's go to the Viper, though. Totally the opposite. The Viper was totally the opposite. Honestly, my personal opinion when I first saw the Viper was, kind
Really?
of very flashy and wasn't doing it for me. And I will say, I thought the demonstration they did on the live letter wasn't incredible for the Viper. It kind of looked like just loads of buttons were lighting up and switching around. And then I saw some that were like duplicates of the same spell. I'm like, what is going on here with this action bar? But in gameplay, oh, mate, great. Super
Really?
fun. This was fine. The way it works is by just maintaining a bunch of buffs. I was a little worried about that from playing jobs and classes in other games that do have a lot of plate. I call it plate spinning. You know, when you see like a circus performer spinning a bunch of plates and keeping loads of them going. I was like, I don't really like plate spinning classes where you're just sort of maintaining buff after buff after buff. It turns out, though, when you actually play it, that at least 3 out of 4 of the buffs just maintain themselves. Once
Pretty much.
they're going,
The job
they
plays
just
itself.
keep going because your finishers and your extra damaging spells just extend them. And that's great. And on boss fights, all of your buffs do this. So you don't really need to worry about it at all. As long as you're semi-aware of what's going on, it all does it itself. And you're like, oh, I can just actually be a full-on DPS once I've got the ball rolling. It's totally fine. And getting the ball rolling is kind of fun once you get used to it because you only have 2 buttons to mess with.
It's kind of reassuring to me that I feel like other people had similar impressions of these jobs that I did. Like feeling at first like Pictomancer, at first to me it felt clunky before I understood how everything fits together. And then with Viper feeling like, wow, this feels like the job plays itself. It makes me feel like, okay, maybe I can trust my own opinion.
To get all your buffs going, it's different orders of those combos.
I'm feeling relieved.
So it goes like maybe 1, 2, 1 gives you some buffs. But then 1, 2, 2 gives you different buffs. But then 2, 1, 2 gives you the final buff, etc. That's how it works. And you get into a rhythm of what needs to be done. And obviously the game also prompts you with light ups and things like that as the ones you probably want to press next.
Yep.
There's some visual. You can see the actual job bar on the screen with the swords that are coming out. The different colors indicate whether you've pressed 1 or 2. So you have a little visual aid to go along with it. So essentially, when you're in gameplay with the Viper,
that's what I didn't even pay attention to that, but that's extra. That's helpful.
It's very just swishy, massive animations that are going on. But realistically, once you've done your first sort of attacks and got your self buffs on, the only buff you need to worry about is actually the debuff on the enemy, which is extra damage taken. Everything else just maintains itself with your natural attacks. And that once you do that, you can then jump into your bigger attacks, which work in a similar way. You just essentially have 2 separate combo systems. You have one combo system which sets up all your buffs, and then another far more damaging and aggressive combat system, which is either single target or AoE. And this was the spec I was probably within like an hour and a half. I did a couple of dungeons on this that I was fully focused on the gameplay rather than sort of checking back onto my spell bars.
Yeah, about an hour
learning
spent.
What the hell was going on?
I think that's the average. About an hour and a half is about how long most people seem to spend to feel like we have a good handle on this job.
A little bit of positionals going on with the ability
knowledge.
to obviously render those positionals pointless for a little short time. Side by side, I tended to lean in favor of the Viper. I think the Picto needs a bit more time. I'm not a big fan of downtime. I'm impatient by nature. So if you're a melee fan, you're absolutely gonna love this. Let's talk about the new dungeon. We'll call it the Jungle Cruise. Interesting, because a big part of DAWNTRAIL in the announcement is that they're letting go of failure. We'll come back to that. So I was expecting something kind of a little different in the dungeon. It's not. This is actually a great introduction to the game. Certainly for people picking up DAWNTRAIL as their first expansion. It is a bread and butter, classically designed FF14 dungeon in the same format we've seen since Stormblood. 3 slightly different landscapes per boss, so each boss and the area changes. So we go from boat to land.
Play WoW and click like a pro. Is FF a game where a person can play just by clicking spells? I think you're going to have an easier time clicking in FF than in WoW. I personally keybind everything.
It's got some... This must be the probably one of the very first things you do when DAWNTRAIL starts. I imagine this is probably like introduction MSQ very briefly, and then you're into this dungeon. And the reason I say that is you do have Urianger and Thancred in that dungeon who are playfully trying to block you off because they want to get to the city first. So I assume we're going to the city. So very similar to what we saw at the end of the Endwalker pre-patch for DAWNTRAIL, is they're kind of playfully having fun with their friends, and they're like, sorry. Thancred's like, sorry, friends. You'll have to take the longer way around. And then he like blocks you off so you run around. So they're goofing around and having fun. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything remotely spoilerish going on.
There's nothing spoilery.
The last boss did prove very difficult for a lot of people at the media tour. I'll admit I died to it a couple of times while I was learning the jobs. Pretty simple once you've done it a couple of times, though, because it just has some mechanics that resolve at different times, but they're both up at the same time.
I think I did. I think I also died to this boss.
Nothing like a couple of
Picto. I'm pretty sure I did.
What I've seen before is you actually have multiple things happening at once, but they resolve differently. So you just have to know which one resolves first and then reposition for the second one. But I saw a lot of people at the media tour getting absolutely crushed into the ground.
We did.
So something to bear in mind. Even Scribe died to this, and he wasn't even playing any of the new jobs. He was playing ones he was familiar with. So there you go. But let's go back to this not being afraid of failure. This is actually, honestly, out of everything they were talking about, DAWNTRAIL and the demo, this is the thing that got me fired up the most. This is the idea that for a while now, CBU3 has not maybe been doing mechanics and creative ideas in their encounters because of fear that people might dislike them. Or they've tried similar things in the past and people have disliked them and been unhappy with what they've gotten out of it. And what they've been doing is just flat out removing it. Anyway, I was super into this. So in the interview with Yoshi-P, I asked him about this. So take a look.
Okay.
まあやっぱりこう長年しかも同
We've
じ
been
チーム
making
でこ
Final
う
Fantasy
作ってき
14
て
for a long time
で
now with the same team, and we've really been doing our best during the development. And that includes me
僕らも一生懸命ゲームを作って
too.
熱心にサポートしてくれ
Thanks
て
to that, we've received a huge amount of community support.
まあたくさんの人に
And
遊んで
many
も
more
らえる
people
よ
have
うに
started to
さら
play
に
our
な
game.
ってみんな
On the one hand,
褒められるのは
I
やっ
think
ぱり
it's
ものすご
great.
く
We
嬉しい
receive
け
praise
ど
for our title,
だんだん
but on the other hand,
怒られる
it's a little bit
ようなことは
concerning
やっぱり
to
が怖
think
くなる
that
っ
if
て
we
いう
avoid
ところ
doing
が
things that make
どうし
people
てもある
angry,
と
we
は
kind of
思
lose
うんで
the
すまず
sense that we're no longer afraid.
るようなことは
Okay, it's a little bit
やっぱり
concerning to
が
think that
怖
if
く
we
なるっ
avoid
てい
doing
うところ
things
が
that make people
どうし
angry,
てもある
we kind of lose the sense that we're no longer afraid to do those challenges. Oh, yeah. They want to lose their inhibitions in the creative process and not be afraid that people will react badly, because constantly being afraid of how people will react will cripple your creative process, and it will result in a end product that is not innovative and it's just the same old, same old. If you play it safe all the time, then it can become formulaic. And this is exactly the issue that Yoshi-P mentioned at PAX East and that he's mentioning again right here. And this is something that any creative person knows, that anybody who posts anything that other people have to respond to knows, that once you start getting in your head so much about are they going to like it, are they going to hate it, you can get away from your vision and your dream and your special sauce that's going to make it yours and that's going to make it memorable and that's going to make it something fresh that yeah, maybe some people will not like it, but what I've learned is that if everybody likes it and nobody has anything to say, usually it's boring. And usually if something is interesting and really cool and special and different and fresh, there's going to be people who don't like it, and you have to live with that. You have to accept that, because you're never going to make everybody happy, and the more you try, the more bland you will become.
とは思うんです、まず。昔は本当に夢中で
So in the past, whenever we were working on boss battles or
新しい
mechanics,
ボスバトル、新しいギミックを考えてやるぜ、もっとみんなに驚いて
we
も
would
らうんだ。
always want to
だか
come
らこ
up
そ
with something
いろんな
unique.
チャレンジをとにかくしてきた。で、
And of
その
course,
中
there were
で
certain
もちろんう
mechanics
まくいった
that
もの
went
もあるし、
well,
プレイヤーの皆さん
but
に
in,
いやもう
maybe
こ
in
の
certain
レイドのこのギミッ
raids,
クが本当に嫌いなんだって
there
言
were
われた
certain
こと
mechanics
もある。
players
で、
didn't
その時
like.
に
And I think one of
す
the
ごい
most
大事なの
important things related to
は
that
その怒
is
られ
that
てこの
sometimes
ギミッ
those
クが嫌い
mechanics
だった
would
っ
be
て
the source of
いう
criticism. They would make players
もの
angry.
をやっぱりもうやめよう。
And
もう
when they
こういう
started
の
to
を作る
question
のをや
those
めよう
mechanics,
ではなく、
we
本
didn't
当
think
は
about what we could do to improve them. We simply stopped making them.
じゃあ
Wow, this is so candid and honest from Yoshi-P. Holy sh**. This is insane.
このギミックの何が嫌いだったんだろう。ど
Wow.
こを直せばもっ
And of
と楽しん
course,
でもらえる
we
んだろ
went
う。
through
だ
that
から
process
こ
because
の
we
ギミッ
wanted
ク
to
をさら
stop
に
the hatred and increase the enjoyment of the game.
生かして次を目指そうであればよかったと思うし、
However,
それが理想だと
when
思う
we
んだ
go
け
through
ど、
that process
どうしても
of
ダメだっ
saying this such and such mechanic is not
て
good,
言われた、嫌だって言われた、じゃあやめよう。で、これを繰り返
let's
している
give
と、
up here.
だんだんなんていうんだろう、
Eventually,
無難なも
we
のしか
only
作
end
ら
up
なくや
with
っ
the
ぱり
safe options. Holy shit. Holy shit. That's true. That's so real and based for him to say this. I actually got chills.
なってきてしまうので、そこがこうプレイヤー
And
の
I
皆
think
さん
it's
を楽
obviously
し
a
ませ
good
たい
thing
って
that
いう
players
気
can
持ちは
enjoy
す
the
ごくいい
game.
ことだとは思うんだけど、だんだんそのチャ
But
レ
I
ンジが減
started
っ
to
ていく
feel
要
it's
因
not
で
good.
もあると思ってるので、そこを
That it's starting to hinder us in the way we challenge ourselves.
感じ始めてるっていうところがまず大きいです。そうだからこそ
And
チ
it is
ャ
for
レン
that
ジをし
very
よう。
reason
失敗は
why
恐
I
れるな。
said to the team that we
失敗
should
したら
not be afraid
そ
of
れを糧に
failures. Let's aim for the next stage and
し
challenge
てまた次へ
ourselves.
行こうっていうのが僕が今チームに
That's
対
what I've
して
been
すごい
saying to
言
the
ってる
team.
ことだし、僕自身ちょっ
And I
と
also
大事にした
think
方
the
がいいかな
same
って
thing
思ってるポイン
myself.
トです。
That's
Wow.
super interesting because you've
What a
always
great
been so
moment.
delicate, whereas other MMOs have
You can't be
swing
afraid. You can't be afraid as you're trying to make new stuff.
the hammer.
The fear
that
will hold you
changes.
back.
On this note, I just want to say
Wow.
how grateful I am that I got the opportunity to have
Insane
this interview with Yoshi-P. As far
moment.
as I'm aware, very
Insane
few
moment.
people globally got this opportunity.
Yeah.
He did lots of interviews, but most of them were audio only because they were for mainstream publications. And I have to give a massive, massive love
What a
here
great
to
leader.
Jamie and Mark
And
from
visionary.
the Square Enix PR team, who worked with me like all day. They I've got
I
to
am really looking forward to see how this new philosophy is going to translate into the actual game content. I wonder how long it's going to take for us to finally be like, yes, I see what he meant, and I can see the proof is in the pudding way in the game.
It's hard to word this. I thought a lot of people were getting interviews. I really did. And when I got there, and the fact that I got one, we would talking
Yeah,
about it
almost
for a while.
nobody got an interview. There's only like a few
really
people
just impressed with that I'd got one.
that got
but
it.
it became very apparent early in the day because Jamie and Mark especially came to me regularly. It's like, how do you want to shoot it? How do you want it to look? Because they were filming it for
I mean, I got a chance to ask him questions. Like we all were given an opportunity to ask questions as whatever we wanted to ask. And Yoshi-P, he waited until everybody was done asking questions. So it's not like he was closed off or anything. And he was actually walking around the computer lab while we were playing, looking over our shoulders, like a teacher. It was so crazy. This is one of the craziest moments of my life, I think, because I'm sitting there in G pose and I look behind me and Yoshi-P's like, okay.
And it turned out Yoshi-P not only watches my stream, but he was very aware of a lot of the work I've done. You guys might not even be aware, but a lot of the work I've done with major heads of studios, certainly in the MMO space and in other spaces, be it grinding games or ArenaNet or
I was being a very good student.
And
I was sitting there with my I was actually sitting at the computer with my flower pen and my cinema roll notepad, looking up. Like I actually felt like I was 8 years old. Looking up at Yoshi-P. Hey.
The things I'd done, and Yoshi-P was 100% aware of all this stuff, and again had watched my stream. And it came down to, in Yoshi-P's own words, is like he was watching the stream when people were asking about comparisons between World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. And my answer impressed him so much that he was like, I want to talk to this guy. And as you can see from the beginning, we got cut off. We could have talked all day. And when I came out, the guys were... there was text messages coming out of the interview room to the other members of staff that, like, yeah, as expected, Yoshi-P is now interviewing Mike because they're just completely like they're doing the back and forth on the design of MMOs and the long-term impact. So I'm not putting the whole interview here because it will come across. It's a little long because of the translation.
It's 45 minutes.
So there's two wonderful translators in the room. So there's a translator for me to translate into Japanese, and a translator for Yoshi-P translating it into English on my behalf. So the whole interview is linked below. I think you're gonna love it. We talked a lot about jobs and where it's going in the future.
Okay, we're about to watch it.
FF14, encounter design, Power Rangers. Like, we had a lot of fun. And as I said, the team was like, you guys have to wrap this up, because we just kept going. We just kept going. And they're like, we've got one more interview to do. So again, massive, so much respect came from Yoshi-P. I obviously respect the hell out of Yoshi-P and what he's achieved with FF14. And hopefully we will have dinner and some wine in the future to really sort of nerd out about MMO stuff, because it was very apparent how much he was enjoying the conversation as well, and laughing and joking. So it was great. In conclusion,
I've noticed that too, that when Yoshi-P talks to players, he seems truly happy. And when I interviewed Yoshi-P in the Endwalker Media Tour, he said to me that interviewing players is really different for him than talking to, like, you know, official press, because he just feels like, you know, you actually play. Like I said, it's really fun to talk to players, and you can tell he truly enjoys it. So
we should head to the media tour. That's the main stuff I got to play in the demo. Obviously, no big spoilers. Is this wonderful bag? I'm going to be giving this away at PreachCon.
It's nice.
Tickets are still available for PreachCon if you want to come and meet some of your favorite content creators.
I showed y'all what's in this bag.
Great day. We'll link that down below. But the official DAWNTRAIL notepad. This is apparently a very, very, very expensive picture that came with it. There's also a compass in here that's like sealed up. There's some really wonderful... I don't want to get too much of it out, but an official DAWNTRAIL compass that works. We tested it at the event.
So y'all have the same stuff at EU.
I'm keeping the hoodie, though. Sorry. I'm keeping the hoodie. Oh, no. I've knocked my thing off. That was my adventure into the media tour, my friends. It was incredible. And if you want to hear some wonderful things about where Final Fantasy XIV is going in the next few years, go and check out that interview, because it was pretty spectacular.
I will check it out right now.
Thank you. Welcome. My name is Preach to our interview that we had with Naomi.
The compass says, I journey westwards towards Tyrol, and it's super nice. Metal compass. Okay, so next is the Mike did an interview with Yoshi-P in which apparently chat bubbles were confirmed. Now, we did see this clip already. I've seen the clip twice. But let's just play it out.
Welcome, my name is Preach, to our interview that we had with Naoki Yoshida at the media tour of DAWNTRAIL. Just a quick note before we jump into it is we have decided to leave both translators in. You'll hear one Japanese into English and one English into Japanese. And as you'll hear in the interview, Yoshida clearly pointed out how much the Japanese love watching his interviews. So if we have access to it, we're going to leave it in there so that everybody can enjoy it.
That makes
so
sense.
you guys can enjoy it too. All right. As you'll see, we both had a very good time in this interview. Super proud of it. It was really exciting. And I think you'll see that he liked it as well. So enjoy.
That's why it's so long.
DAWNTRAIL and FF14 into the future. Here it comes.
Okay.
僕からまずご参加いただいて改めてありがとうございます。
First of all, I'd like to say thank you again for joining us on the Global Media Tour.
このグローバルメディアツアー、今日が僕にとっても最終日なので、ちょっとしかもプリッツさんも長くやって随分ちょっとお疲れかもしれませんが、45分楽しく行きたいのでぜひよろしくお願いします。
And for me as well, this is the final day of the media tour, and I think you've been here all day, Preach, and you must be tired yourself. It's only 45 minutes for today's interview, but I hope you enjoy it.
そしてすごい大事なこと、いつもファイナルファンタジー14のサポート本当にありがとうございます。
And also, one very important thing, thank you so much for always supporting Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah.
I think people have been excited about me talking to you since the day I installed this game.
多分おそらく皆さん自分がこのゲームをインストールしてから
Just hold the left mouse button on the video to speed up.
僕も
Okay.
実はちゃんと
We'll do that if there's like a long.
偶然なんですけど、本当配信は拝見していて、特に印象に残ってるのがそのワールド・オブ・ウォークラフトとファイナルファンタジー14を実際にプレイしながらものすごく論理的に冷静に比較して分析をするっていうところからスタートしてくださってて、それは僕も夢中で見てました。
Thank you so much. I think actually this was just a coincidence, but I watched one of your streams by coincidence, and I noticed that you compared World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. You were playing them, and you were very logical in your analysis. You were very calm in your analysis, and that really left a big impression on me.
I really appreciate that. It's one of the things that's allowed me to do these interviews with the heads of...
Yoshi-P watches all of these streams and videos. Because at the Q&A, when he was talking... Around the same time that he was mentioning me specifically, he was like, and he had mentioned Arthar's enzymes specifically. He said, you know, we watched these streams, the dev team is watching these streams, and regardless of language.
Many MMOs over the last 10 years.
So
and extensive hours and hours of interviews with Blizzard and Grinding Gear Games and Arena.
Always
watching. So I really appreciate that. It's fantastic.
Yoshi-P is a bun.
こういうことを続けてたわけでいろんなブリザードとかいろんなゲームのヘッドの人たちとこうやってインタビューをすることができたので非常に光栄に思います。ありがとうございます。
ではもし質問がたくさんあればよろしくお願いします。
Okay, well, if you have many questions, here's your chance.
I do have one thing to admit.
Okay.
When I first played FF14, I thought I was going to hate it. I told my audience that this would be 5 days maximum. But the story you crafted with the Hydaelyn Zodiac storyline gripped me by day one. And
can you see him there?
I could not put it down. So it's truly successful what you created.
Wow.
まず認めなくてはいけないのは絶対にこのゲームは嫌いになるなと思ってまして、もう最大でも5日間ぐらいまでした。
Was he watching the purity test? No! No, he probably was. He's been busy. He's been really busy lately, so I doubt. I bet he probably missed it. They were so busy.
してくれました。非常に素晴らしい成功したゲームだと思います。
いや、それをすごくこうやっぱり人ってその失敗をなかなか認めたがらないというか、正直にそれを話してくれるっていうところが僕はもう見ててもすごくスカッとしたところですし、すごくこうリスペクトを感じるところなので、でもそう言ってもらえると本当に嬉しいです。
Oh yeah, you know, people are a mysterious thing. When failure happens, they really don't want to admit it. But seeing you there so honest with me, that really pulled at me, and I really respect you for that. So, and I'm so happy to hear it. So
he appreciates honesty a lot.
Let's get started, I think.
That's something you might notice about Yoshi-P.
One thing you said on stage earlier really drove my brain crazy given all the design stuff we've talked about, and that is to let go of the fear of failure in your raid encounters. I don't think we saw it in the dungeon we saw today, but I'm really curious, has the team come up with ideas over the last few years that you've had to say no to, and now the floodgates can open up, not a lot, but a little bit for these greater ideas?
So is this the question that we just seen in this previous video, the media tour video that he posted just before, where Yoshi-P gave this insanely candid, honest answer about it? I think probably, I bet this is it. I bet this is it. Fast forward to that.
やっぱりこう長年しかも同じチームでこう作ってきてて、僕らも一生懸命ゲームを作ってコミュニティもすごく熱心にサポートしてくれて、で、たくさんの人に遊んでもらえるようにさらになって、みんな褒められるのはやっぱりものすごく嬉しいけど、だんだん怒られるようなことはやっぱり怖くなるっていうところがどうしてもあるとは思うんですまず。
Well, we've been making Final Fantasy XIV for such a long time now with the same team, and we've really been doing our best in the development, and that includes me too. And thanks to that, we have received a huge amount of community support, and many more people have started to play our game. On the one hand, I think it's great that we receive praise for our title, but on the other hand, it's a little bit concerning to think about that if we do things that would make people angry, we kind of lose the sense that we're no longer afraid to do those challenges.
Yeah. So I've already talked about this when we heard it in the media tour video.
夢中で新しいボスバトル、新しいギミックを考えてやるぜ、もっとみんなに驚いてもらうんだ。だからこそいろんなチャレンジをとにかくしてきた。で、その中でもちろんうまくいったものもあるし、プレイヤーの皆さんにいやもうこのレイドのこのギミックが本当に嫌いなんだって言われたこともある。で、その時にすごい大事なのはその怒られてこのギミックが嫌いだったっていうものをやっぱりもうやめよう、もうこういうのを作るのをやめようではなく、本当はじゃあこのギミックの何が嫌いだったんだろう、
And so that's why a lot of
どこを
times
直せばもっと
devs
楽しんでもらえるんだろう。
they
だから
streamline
このギミックをさらに生かして
and
次を目指
simplify
そうであれば
and they make
よかった
everything
と思うし、それが理想だと
have
思うんだ
less
けど、
failure states
どうしても
possible,
ダメだって言われた、
but
嫌
this
だって
can
言われた、じゃあやめ
degrade
よ
the
う。
overall experience. You can erode away complexity. You can
だんだんなんていうの、
make things more shallow, you know.
無難なものし
I'm
か
not
作
saying
らな
that
きゃや
all
っ
of
ぱりなっ
that
てき
is
てしまう
bad.
の
Like some of it
で、
is absolutely
そこ
necessary.
がこうプレイヤーの皆さんを
But
楽しませたいっていう気
knowing
持
where to
ちは
draw
す
the
ごく
line
いい
is
ことだ
something
とは
that
思
it
うんだ
seems
け
like
ど、
the dev team
だ
is
んだん
finally starting
チャレンジが減っ
to
ていく要因で
understand.
もあると思ってる
Like
の
you
で、
can't always just
そこを
give players
今
everything
感
that
じ
they
始
ask
めて
for.
るって
Like
い
you
うとこ
have
ろ
to
が
sometimes let
ま
them
ず大き
fail,
いです
let them have an opportunity to learn.
So in the past, whenever we were working on boss battles or mechanics, we would always want to come up with unique boss battles or mechanics. And of course, there were certain mechanics that went well, but maybe in certain raids, there were certain mechanics that players didn't like. And I think one of the important things related to that is that sometimes those mechanics would be the source of criticism. Those mechanics would make players angry. And when they started to question those mechanics, we didn't think about what we could do to improve those mechanics. So we just simply stopped making them. And of course, we
they just became so afraid of
because we
pissing
wanted
players
to
off.
stop the hatred and we wanted to increase the enjoyment of the game. However, when we go through that
You don't want to throw the whole baby out with the
process
bathwater.
of saying this such and such mechanic is not good, let's give up here, eventually we only end up with the safe options. And I think it's obviously a good thing that we make adjustments so that players can enjoy the game. But I think it's, I started to feel that it's not good, that is also hindering ourselves in the way that we ourselves challenge ourselves.
So much respect. So much respect.
失敗を恐れるな。
Because it's not just about giving players the chance to challenge themselves. It's about the devs enjoying what they're doing and also having a chance to make something really incredible, you know. That's interesting.
And it's for that very reason why I said to the team that we should not be afraid of failures. Let's aim on for the next stage and challenge ourselves.
Cool.
That's what I've been telling to the team, and I also think the same thing myself.
That's super interesting because you've always been so delicate, whereas other MMOs swing the hammer, the changes.
Yeah.
Sometimes
too delicate.
An approach you take out of fear of hatred, or is this more? It's better to just gently move the ship rather than trying to do massive changes at once.
これ非常に面白いと思ってます。他の MMO はもうすごくこう大胆にダイナミックに動かすことに対してユーザーさん非常にその変化がすごい繊細だというふうに感じています。でこれっていうのは要はそのヘイトへの恐れから来るものなのか、あるいは普通にやっぱり徐々にその船をそれこそゆっくり進めるのようなのが初めから思っている。
僕もそもそもオンラインゲームをスタートしたのがディアブロ1で。ウルティマオンラインはベータからやってるぐらい、MMORPG もういろんなものを世界中の
Everything's perception. It's all how you control your view of
ヘリー
things.
スウィングでプレイヤーがどれだけ混乱するか、そして
Makes you biased
ヘ
if
リー
you
スウィング
let
の
it.
意図がわからないとき、みんな怒るんですよやっぱり。で僕はそれをずっと見てきて、本当にもったいない、こんなにいいゲームなのに。
I think if the game has more opportunities for players to challenge themselves and grow and improve by being able to overcome those challenges that are reasonable for them, people will gain confidence over time, and they won't turn their nose up at it every time that situation presents itself. They'll feel like, yeah, I can handle this. I handled that other thing, you know.
So I myself am a heavy online gamer. I made my debut in online gaming with Diablo 1, and I also played the Ultima Online beta. So I've played many.
He's like, okay, so I am a gamer. Preach.
Online games from around the world.
We have gamer Yoshi-P in full force.
I understand that if there is a heavy swing at a certain point, it will cause player confusion, and if they don't know why that was incorporated, it will lead to anger. So I think if there is not enough communication from the developers, then it wouldn't be good because there's a lack of knowledge. As a game, there needs to be some sort of change, but I felt that that change should come incorporated gradually, and then once people get used to it, it would make sense to them. So that is what I took care about in this policy.
Nice.
That's good. If I can expand on that to dungeon design, we did the new dungeon today. It's great, but it follows the exact same structure that we've seen in every dungeon since Stormblood.
Really?
Which is 3 bosses, 3
Are you really saying about the dungeon design?
distinct areas per boss. Is that something internally you feel is the perfect dungeon experience? Because it hasn't changed in years. Or is that something else where you think we could maybe you want to loosen up the reins?
Oh my god.
今の話を
He really asking about the formulaic dungeon design.
で今日ハンドオンして新しいダンジョンになりました。すごい楽しかったです。ただストームブラッド以降
That's a great question.
でボス3体で進んでいくっていう。
Okay.
でこれっていうのはもう吉田さんの中でこれが究極系なのかっていうふうに思っているのか、あるいはこれ今後何か手こ入れをしてちょっと変更を加えていくようなものなのか。
まず僕らこういうなんですか分かりやすいそのブループリント状態になっているのを、少なくとも僕はパッケージという呼び方をしてます。
First and foremost, we have something that's easily understood. It's a blueprint of sorts, and I call it a package.
で、このパッケージをいろんなコンテンツごとにこうデザインするんですけど、今のインスタンスダンジョンのパッケージっていうのは、1回のプレイで、1回のダンジョンに行くプレイで何分かかるかっていう計算から作ってます。
So this package design is applied for each type of content, and when it comes to packages, the package for instance dungeons, it's designed based on a calculation that depending on how long it would take to do one playthrough the dungeon.
特に昔に比べて今の時代の皆さんは本当に仕事も忙しいし、
They perfectly calculate exactly how much time it will take.
家族とのコミュニケーションも必要。
Oh yeah? But what about when I bring in 3 DPS and 1 warrior? What about that? What about that in your calculation?
やっぱりゲームに避ける時間っていうのは減ってきていると思ってて、その中でも今よりも例えばインスタンスダンジョンがあと1ボス多いってなると、 30分以上かかるか。今日はやめとこうかな。
What about man mode?
2ボスしかいないってなるとすごい物足りない。なので僕は今の状況だとこの3つのボスがいて、だいたいおおよそ早ければ12分、長くても20分で終わるっていうデザインはまだしばらく続けてもいいだろう。
Manatees are not normally this vicious, right? They're usually very chill. This one is mad.
Compared to the past, people are very busy, whether it be work, engaging on social media, or maybe their commitments with their friends and family and so on. So they do have less time for gaming. So when we look at an instance dungeon and maybe consider adding one more boss, from the player's perspective, they might be thinking, it's going to take me another 30 minutes. I think I'll just stop here. Then on the other end, we might consider cutting down the number of bosses so that there are just 2 bosses. And then from the player's perspective, they might be feeling that that's not enough. So when we considered that, we thought that 3 bosses was just the good
3
amount.
3 bosses is fine.
So if players are fast on a run through, they might be able to finish the dungeon in 12 minutes. And if they take more time, they might get through the dungeon in about 20 minutes. But we think that this is a good balance, and we would like to continue based on this format.
Okay, but here's some options, right? If we're worried about people not having time to go back to posting on Twitter or whatever they're doing, you know, they want to. I respect that they want the dungeon to be a predictable amount of time to take. This makes sense to me. Like, you don't want to go into a dungeon and you're like, oh crap, I just got a Hukatumu, and that means I'm going to be stuck in here for the next 25 to 30 minutes. Hell, it might even take 45 minutes. You don't want that, okay? And so you want it to be a predictable amount of time, and I think the amount of time it takes is good. But we've had dungeons in the past where you can spice things up a little bit by pulling a lot of packs at once. Like, for example, instead of just 2 packs boss, 2 packs boss, you could pull like a ton of crap all at once. And that is, you can challenge yourself in that way as a tank. I think for me, with the dungeon package as it is, it doesn't leave a lot of room for the tank to guide the team through the dungeon, which is something that I find fun about tanking. In the past, you would even also be able to choose a pathway, and I'm kind of glad they got rid of that. But that used to be another thing that you could do. It's like, well, I know the way because I'm the tank and I know what to do here. That's something that I find fun about tanking, but that now I feel like I don't really do. So as a tank, I don't really need to worry about aggro management. I don't need to worry about guiding the team through the dungeon, and I don't need to worry about pulling too many. And those are 3 things that made tanking satisfying for me in a dungeon that I can't really do. So that's why I feel like it's really, the question is more about number of packs and number of mobs that you can pull. And maybe this is something that they can mess around with more with duty support, because now that every single dungeon has duty support, and this is something that you can do solo, well, why not add in a couple of extra bells and whistles to that, right? Like, maybe you could make a version of the dungeon that has like 5 times as many mobs or something, has different rewards, and you can just tune the way that, like, how strong your helpers are within that. I think duty support could be a potential, like, go duty support, savage mode. You know, this way it's not going to affect other people at all, or how long it's going to take them to squeeze in their duty roulette, which I think is totally valid concern. But make an opportunity for dungeons. Let us play around in these dungeons a bit more, because the dungeons are beautiful, and I just feel like I don't spend enough time in them.
でもう1個ポイントがあって、
Like, I get my
開発チー
tombstones
ム
for
に
the
とって
week,
こ
and I'm
の
just
パッ
kind
ケー
of.
ジっていうのは
I
す
feel
ご
like
く
I
ある意味
barely
コス
did
トと
dungeons
スケジュールが
in
読みやすい。例えば3体のボスがいて道中がある。で大体フェーズ1、フェーズ2、フェーズ3に分かれてるっていう時に何人のアーティストが必要で何人のゲームデザイナーが作業して何週間かかって
Yeah, I
何個
loved
作れるっていう
Mount Gold
の
man
が
mode
すごく
fools.
もう明
We
確に
even
な
had
る
some
の
of
で
that.
マネージメントしやすくたくさんの量を作り
There
や
was
すい
an
っていうメリッ
Anamnesis
トがあります。
dungeon that you could also pull a lot. I've done some Stormblood dungeons and Duty Roulette that have
And
also
so
let you
from
pull a
the
lot.
development team's perspective, the package has a benefit in that it's easy for them to factor in the resources and scheduling required to develop the dungeon. So for example, there would be 3 bosses, and then there would be trash throughout the course of the dungeon.
Right.
And you would have a phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And then you would be able to know which artists and which game designers would be need to assigned to develop that. And they would know how long it would take to develop. So from a management perspective, it's really easy to manage and develop the content.
で、最終的にもっとエキサイトしたいっていうリクエストが多いようなら、もう一個別の
He knows exactly how long it's going to take them to make the
その
content.
ブループリントを作ればいいと思っていて。
So this is another reason that the trains are running on time. You know,
もう道中の
they know how long it's going to take to
道
make.
中はなく
It's
して
very
トラッシュも
predictable
なく
in
し
the
て
development
もう連続してボス
process.
と4体連続で戦うような
Which I
別
get
の
that
コン
too.
テン
That's
ツ
another
別のパッ
benefit
ケー
of
ジを
the,
作った
this
方が
approach.
どっちも
It's
納得で
nice
きる。いや
always
アイデアこ
being
れぐらい
able
キャプチャーでいい
to,
よ。でも
without
もっとエキサイト
doubt,
したいって人の
you
ために
know
もう
the
ボスラッ
patch is
シュみたいな
coming
コンテ
and
ン
you
ツを作
know
れば
what's going to be in it.
またコンテンツのタイプも
And
増え
that
る
is
コンテンツの
not a
倍数も
bad
増えるし
thing.
さらにそれをこう数増やしていくと
The
豊かになっていくので
consistency
そういう考え方でこう作ってたりします。
is really amazing.
So
for
if
the
we
game.
do find that maybe there are requests from players and they want to have a more exciting experience, I think the solution for that is to simply create a different blueprint.
Yeah.
We could just remove all of the trash from the dungeon so that it would be just 4 consecutive bosses, and we could incorporate that into a different package. So for some people, instance dungeons would be fine, but for other players, maybe they could try out this content, which would be sort of like a boss rush content. So it's, I think it's our policy that we try to develop different types of content and incorporate variation.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll get a dungeon that's like, okay, it's 4 bosses and there's no trash. Okay, and then the next dungeon, there's going to be 1 boss and the rest is all trash. So basically, you pull literally the entire dungeon. You take it all to the last boss. You know what? I would do that. I would actually love that. But you have so much trash to kill that it's going to take you. This whole process is still going to take you like 10 minutes.
And then that creates a more rich playing experience for the players.
What if the only trash? Oops, only trash.
Yeah, and did you see an influx of players from the West have a impact internally over this kind of design?
It's like Strathholme. Do y'all remember old Strathholme from WoW, where it's like you get in there and it's just nothing but
Because they were
trash for like
used to
1,000
different
years.
experiences elsewhere.
That's a boomer reference.
西側からの、プレイヤーの、急激な増加がに伴って、他のプレイヤーの人たちは他のゲームで違うデザインをたくさん体験しているので、そういう人たちがたくさん流れ込んできたと。で、それによる開発への影響っていうのは何かあったでしょうか。
いやむしろやっぱりこう今まで14をプレイしなかった人たちってなんかちょっとアニメライクだし、あんまりこうちょっと幼稚な感じもするし、あんまり自分たちに合わないんじゃないかって思ってた人たちが、多いやっぱり印象で、でも遊んでもらった結果、やっぱり本当に多くの人たちがワールドオブクラフトを経験してきてるので、ワールドオブクラフトベースというかゲームデザインの僕ら参考にものすごいさせてもらってるので、そこにニュアンスはありながらこんなに違ったゲーム作るんだみたいな感じで、むしろすごく新鮮にこう感じてもらってるので、あんまりなんかこうだからこうしてほしいみたいなのはあんまり今のところはなかったりします。みんな純粋に楽しんでくれてるみたいな印象ですね。
No, rather, I think if anything, a lot of the people who haven't played Final Fantasy XIV before, they typically associate Final Fantasy XIV with having an anime style, and for them it comes across as childish, so they feel that they...
Did he bring that up? Because he knows that Mike refuses to watch anime, and that's why he's giving you this face right now. I bet, dude. Because Mike is famous for not wanting, oh, I don't like anime. Oh my god, dude. And I'm always like, but Mike, if you like Final Fantasy XIV, I got news for you. You like anime because Final Fantasy XIV is the most anime MMO ever made. Especially if you like the story, which is so anime. You are Delulu if you think that you don't like anime and you like FF14 as much as you do. And look at Yoshi-P! Called out, dude.
They won't like it. But I think a lot of those people, it's just my impression, but when they do play Final Fantasy XIV, because they've experienced World of Warcraft themselves, and actually, we've used World of
so pleased.
Warcraft a lot at the basis.
Matt, Yoshi-P He really went to the media tour and thought of all the ways he's going to call out literally every content creator, didn't he? On his way there, he's like, okay. All right, so Zeems and Arthars have been complaining. All right. Okay, Zepla, she's been complaining. Oh, Mike, didn't he say it was a weeb game? It was too anime. Okay. He really getting ready to just call out everybody.
For them, it comes across as childish, so they feel that they won't like it. But I think a lot of those people, it's just my impression, but when they do play Final Fantasy XIV, because they've experienced World of Warcraft themselves, and actually we've used World of Warcraft a lot at the basis of as reference material for our development.
Yes.
They will come to appreciate that even though World of Warcraft is used, you can still create such a different game experience, and I think for them it comes across as being really novel. So I think from that perspective, they really do just purely enjoy the game.
Wait till the haters find out. Wait till the WoW haters find out that Yoshi-P loves WoW so much that he asked the dev team to refer to it while creating the basis for Final Fantasy XIV. Yeah, the haters are gonna really not like that very much at all. This news is devastating. Oh, hey, Yona, thank you so much for the raid. I really appreciate that. We were here talking about how Yoshi-P just mentioned that they used World of Warcraft as the basis for and a lot of the inspiration for the early development of Final Fantasy XIV. And this is something that I'm sure Mike can appreciate is coming from WoW. I can appreciate is also coming from WoW. And it's just something that I find so funny because of the people that are constantly hating on World of Warcraft players and stuff, when Yoshi-P is maybe one of the biggest ones. Yeah. But welcome in. I do appreciate the raid. We are settling in for a long day of looking at media tour videos and stuff.
The reason I didn't play Final Fantasy XIV was every time someone tried to get me to play, they would send me a screenshot of people dressed as Power Rangers or Lalafels running around and telling me it was the best story ever, or cat ladies doing things in Limsa, and I immediately went, no. No.
Cat girls doing stuff in Limsa. We know what. We all know about that tree.
毎回誰かが14を初めて
I can't believe he really called out Mike for that. This is one of the best Yoshi-P interviews I have ever seen. He's laughing his ass off.
戦隊もののパワーレンジャーがいたりとか、誰かが走り回ったりとか、キャットレディがセクシーポーズを取ってたり、リムさんが撮ってたりとかっていうのを見て、もう僕的には無理だと。はい。やっぱり僕本当に世界中の皆さんがどういう話をしてるのか、レディットも含めてすごい見てるので、そういうのと正直にみんなが何て言ってるかちゃんと理解してるので。
Yeah, I myself, I
You'd be
look
playing
at what
WoW if they did not force me to do another patch of Torga. We're playing WoW right now. We have WoW guilds up as well as our FF14 FCs.
Players from around the world are talking about. I also I check Reddit as well, so I really do understand what everyone's talking about.
でも逆にそういう
He does check Reddit, I bet, every day.
本当に何かのきっかけで。それこそプリンスさんだったり
So he knows that I had problems resubscribing
言うならやってみるかって言ってやった人ほど
to the video
全然違った
game.
イメージが違った本当にそうじゃなかったって
He
言って
definitely
くださるので
knows
僕は
about
本当それ
that.
が嬉しいですよ
But really, whenever those kinds of people start playing the game, and also you preach, and other content creators, when people really do insist, and then they finally take the plunge and try out the game, and then they realize that it was so different to their expectations, to hear this kind of feedback from you, it honestly makes me glad.
Oh, he's so
It makes
happy.
me glad too, because I have never cried at a video game in my life. But I've cried 5 times
Really
in Final Fantasy XIV,
Oh,
and I've ranked
This is really
it
wholesome.
because people ask me all the time, as certainly Shadowbringers and Heaven's Ward, as
Oh man, Seto, why you gotta bring Seto out like
two
that?
in my top 5 best RPG games of all time. Not just MMO, RPG games.
Dude, I'm gonna
Chrono
cry
Trigger
right
#1,
now.
But then we get to Shadowbringers and Heaven's Ward, and I would never have found it due
Sorry,
to
I couldn't keep you safe.
how
Oh my
people
God.
tried to get me to play the game.
私もすごいやってよかったなというふうに思います。 で、まあ自分の人生体験
Dude, nobody, if you don't cry in this scene, I don't know what to tell you. There was not a dry eye in the house.
これが初めての体験でした。で、
How dare you, Mike? How... Well, blame Chris. Chris is the editor who's putting this in here at this moment.
まあ、シャドーブリンガーズとあとヘズンズ・ウォーがもうとにかく自分の中のゲーム体験とか RPG の、MMO とか RPG の中のもトップ5の中の2つを占めるものとなりました。クロノトリガーが一番で、もうシャドーブリンガー7っていうのはその次に続くという感じだと、こういう体験は他の人がこれだけ強く進めてくれなかったら絶対できなかったものだと思います。
いや、もうそう言ってくれると嬉しいです。
I do have to say here though, I do kind of need to, I do need to say something here though. Even though many people cried in scenes like this, after talking with other content creators and streamers that have gone through the game, like on the other side of things from another perspective, I know people that are just not as expressive with their emotions as others. And sometimes people will go through the game and everyone's expecting them to cry at a scene where they cried and they don't, because everybody's different. Like everyone feels emotions, everyone expresses emotions differently. And I've talked to some people who they didn't cry in scenes where they're expected to cry by everyone or they didn't have like a big outward emotional reaction, but then I asked them, how did you really feel? And they said that they felt it very deeply and intensely, but they just not everybody shows that the same way, and that's been something that's kind of hard for a lot of people that play through the game the first time with these these big expectations around these well-known emotional moments. And so if you ever watch someone going through the game and you feel like they're not, like it feels like they're not into it, they might be, it's just not always easy to tell.
まあ僕 MMORPG の大ファンでもありますけど、やっぱり RPG のファンなので
Yeah, even me, like I was when I streamed Shadowbringers, I was terrified to cry on camera. It took me, I didn't even stream the end of Shadowbringers at all because I was scared. Now I'm at a point where I'm so comfortable on camera. But it's not that easy to do if you're not that comfy on camera. Or even if you are comfy on camera, it's just not the type of person that you are. Everybody's different. You got to remember that. Corn Acorn, thank you for the 27-month resub. I do appreciate that.
RPG だとしてもそのストーリーの体験っていうのを別になくしていいわけじゃないとやっぱり思ってるので、やっぱりストーリー作ってる時っていうのはこれはもう RPG なんだと思って作ってるから、もうそう言ってもらえると僕だけじゃなくて多分日本のスタッフも全員喜んでると思うので、今みんなガッツポーズしてると思うから。
Wow.
Oh, but yeah, thank you so much. It makes me so happy to hear that. I myself, of course, I'm a big MMORPG fan, but at the same time, I am an RPG fan. So even though this is an MMORPG, I don't have any intention of removing the story aspect because I do place a lot of importance on the story aspect of this as an RPG in the development. And I think when we hear...
Oh, crap.
That kind of feedback, it's not only me, but the staff in Japan right now must be so proud, and I'm sure they're raising their fists in the air.
Are they watching? 見てますよ。本当に見てます。
Of course, they do watch.
Yeah. They're watching the video now, but later, which is now for us.
On that aspect, one of the biggest things that surprised me about your game is you have made the #1 social game in all MMOs, and I've tried many from Ultima, PlanetSide, everything onwards.
Crawlers.
It surprised me how much my audience, fortunately I had this experience, were able to take part in my story and bring me along. If they were in the background playing janitors or things like that, and stage plays that they threw.
This is actually so sweet. If you don't know what happened, Mike's FC, the Crawlers, they put on a stage play to like celebrate, his experience going through the game. And you can see it here.
They made an entire story on a stage telling my leveling story. And they used reshaping the house in the play to change the scenery and all these tools. And I have to wonder, did you start with that intention? And now, how do you look at this environment where players are playing a game within a game separate from what you're creating internally.
Yeah, the social stuff. There's no way he could have anticipated that it became what it has. It turned into this thing that sometimes feels greater than the sum of its parts.
演劇にして再現してくれるっていうすごく心温まるエピソードがありました。で、こういったツールの提供もありますし、
subscribe.
こういったゲームいわゆる設計してきたもの以外のゲーム体験っていうのをもう初めからその想定したというか、こういうのを
I forgot about that.
実際にこういうものが行われることをあらかじめ読んでこういった設計とかをしてくれる。
僕のやっぱり MMORPG の一番最初のそのショックインパクトはウルティマオンラインなので、僕は今でもやっぱウルティマオンラインは本当に極限究極の MMORPG だなって思ってるところがあります。
For me, in terms of MMORPG, the first shock and the first sense of impact that I had was when I played Ultima Online. And so for me, I think Ultima Online represents the ultimate MMORPG.
自分たちで、そう、でも、わかる。でも自分たちで。
Now that's what's actually going to send shockwaves around the world. Not you saying that there's chat bubbles, but that you saying that Ultima Online is actually the ultimate MMORPG.
で、何でも作っていかなきゃいけない、ルールも作らなきゃいけない、その身も守らなきゃいけないっていうすごい難易度が高いゲームだったので、逆に今、
Nobody, I didn't see that
ルールも含めて作ってる。当然僕は MMORPG を作るっていうか担当になった時に、今まさに言ってくれたような演劇をしてくれてたり、
It is in the name. That's true.
まあハイパードして鬼ごっことかかくれんぼをしていたり、やっぱりこのゲームは遊ぶものじゃなくて MMO は住むものであるっていうのが僕は究極だとやっぱ思っていて、もちろんそれを目指して作ってはきたけど、本当にそれを皆さんがやってくれるかどうかはやっぱ分からないので、初めてそういうシチュエーション、みんながやっぱり日本だったりでも演劇をやってくださってる方とかいらっしゃるんで、ものすごい感動しました。今でもそうですし、多分一番幸せな瞬間だと思います、我々が。
Yeah, I do understand, but you know, back then we had to create various things. We had to defend ourselves, and so on. But on the other hand, with Final Fantasy XIV, we have various systems and various rules to carry out our development. And of course, with Final Fantasy XIV as an MMORPG, there are aspects which would happen, like as you mentioned, maybe some people would do a performance in the town, like acting in the town. Other people would maybe play games of hide and seek. And so I really aimed to create this world where people could actually live out their lives. But I didn't know if we would be able to achieve it unless people actually started talking about it and mentioning it. And in Japan as well, we've seen that there are people who put on these productions in terms of theatrical performances. And then when I hear about those things, it makes me extremely glad. And I think at this moment, when we hear that, it makes us the happiest.
It was one of the most astonishing things I've seen done in an MMO, because I don't think any other MMO can even practically do it in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
今までの MMO 体験の中でももうものすごい衝撃的な出来事でした。で、おそらく他の MMO ではこういったことが多分できないのではないか、どんな形であれできないのではないかというのを。
そうか、でもそれは嬉しいな。なんか多分もし自分で
One thing about Final Fantasy XIV that I think enables that is the fact that we have incredible emotes, and the emote system is really nice. Like the characters look great and the emotes look great, and I think this is actually a really important part of being able to express yourself through these kinds of things, like socially. I think it's kind of an underrated part that gets underutilized a lot in some other games. That plus the housing system, I guess, that let them set up the theater and things.
っていうチャンスが来たら、きっとそういうものをみんながやってくれるようなものを作りたいと多分思うはずなんですよ。なので、いやでもあなたのゲームではそれが実現されてますよって言われると、やっぱりめちゃくちゃ嬉しい。もともとね、MMO のヘビーゲーマーなので。
Oh, wow. That makes me so happy to hear. I think, you know, if you thought that you would want to create your own MMO, I think you would probably want to be aiming for the same thing. And to hear that our game has achieved that, especially as a hardcore MMO gamer, it makes me so happy.
A living, breathing world that we're supposed to be in,
Yeah.
and things should matter. Although I don't agree with their use of Lalafells as raid markers.
もう本当に生きる世界のところに住むっていうのが非常に
The way he laughed as soon as Mike said that tells me that Yoshi-P has seen this.
体験できますけど、
Yoshi-P has 100%
ララフェ
seen
ルをレードマーカーに使うのはちょっと
what Mike is referring to.
It took me a while to figure out what they were
Yes.
supposed to be.
Yes, he is.
それが
He 100%
何なのかってしばらく時間がかかりました
has seen
理解す
it.
る。
なるほど。
I see.
Let's move on to jobs. I
Jobs.
played a lot of Viper today, a lot of Pictomancer.
Look how cute this boss is. Look how
When you're
cute.
introducing new
We need this mount, please.
jobs into FF14 every couple of years, and an ever-expanding roster of jobs,
Is there too many
how
jobs?
difficult is it internally with the whole new glamour, whole new relic weapon system,
Great
and
question.
overburdening the players with what may be a problem in 6 years' time?
Yes.
はい、今日序文の話に移ります。で、今日たくさんバイパーだったり、ピクトマンサーっていうのを遊ばせていただきました。で、まあもう結構な序文の数になりますし、あと何年に一度またそれをさらに増やしていくっていうことを続けていますけど、内部的につまり開発においてこれがどれだけ大変なことなのか、つまり新しいグラマーも作らないといけないですし、新しいレディックウェポン武器強化コンテンツのための武器
Was he also just trying to get that hammer and burst? I think he
を作らない
was.
といけないし、で
I tried. I couldn't do it. Maybe
こうい
once.
ったシステム
One
が
bonk.
プレイ
I
ヤ
could
ー
fit
に
in the
対し
burst.
て非常に負荷になっている可能性もある。6年後にこの実装し続けることによって負荷になることはないのでしょうか。
まあやっぱりいろんな MMO を自分でもプレイしてきて、やっぱりエクスパンションパックがリリースされるっていう時にワクワクする要素って、まあ当然新しいエリア、新しいスキル新しい冒険に出ていけるっていうところはもちろんなんですけど、コンバットにどれだけ大きなその変化や追加があるか、それから種族が追加されるかどうかみたいなところは本当にエクスパンションパックの絶対花形だとまず思ってます。
So, of course, I've played many MMOs, and whenever I think about MMOs and I think about a new expansion that releases, of course, there's excitement about the new areas, the new fields, the new adventure that you will go on. But I think more than anything, players would be thinking about how many big changes are there in terms of the combat, what sorts of races will be added, and so on. And I think though the jobs really are the poster boys of the expansion.
Yeah.
で今のところそれが一番わかりやすいのはやっぱ新しいジョブが追加されますっていうことによって、あ、どんなジョブが来るんだろ
That is true.
う、どんなメカニクスを持ってるんだろう、
That's why
自
it's
分に合
hard
うの
not
かな、
to add new
楽しいのかなっ
ones
ていうやっぱりワクワクするポイントが
every
一番わ
time
かり
you
やすい。
can.
And I think when you hear that a new job is going to be added, the easiest thing to understand is that sense of excitement when you imagine what sort of mechanics will they have, what sort of job will it be.
た
Yeah.
だ確かにこの先40ジョブになるってもし将来を考えるとちょっと待ってくれ、ギアはもうボックス
I
も足りない
worry
し
about
どれをやあと例えば
about
新しく
them,
始めようとした人はもうどれやったらいい
having
の
a
40個もある
hard time
多分どっかで限界は来るとは思ってます。
adding more and more and more.
But let's say hypothetically somewhere down the line we have 40 jobs. You would have some problems in terms of maybe you don't have enough slots for your gear. And then for new players starting out, they will be completely at a loss at which job should they
Right.
start playing.
Yeah, what do you
So
have?
there is a limit to how far we can take it.
だからどっかでおそらく考える必要が出てくる
Well,
の
how
は
many will we be
今あ
at
るジョ
after
ブたちを
Picto
より
and
さらに
Viper?
面
How
白くす
many
る
is
ための
that
多分
now?
システムアップ
Because
デー
I
ト
thought it was
コンバットのアップデート
19
っていうのが
before. Is it
必要になるだろうと
21?
思っていて、今まさにコンバットバトルシステムを中心に
Seems like
し
a
た
lot.
主力メンバーでどういうビジョンを描いて次のステージへ行くかっていうのを議論している最中なので、まあさすがに40ジョブになる前に
What else
それの
can
答え
they
が出るんじゃないかな
add?
と思います。
So of course we need to think about what we should do at some point. And so we could consider making the combat or the jobs
22 plus limited job
more
with the limited
interesting
job.
and incorporating combat updates. And this is something that we are currently discussing with our combat battle system teams.
Right.
Because we need to consider what sort of vision will we have moving forward. And
They already have to plan the next expansion. And Yoshi-P said maybe ice, maybe winter themed for next one.
How will we approach the next stage moving forward? So these discussions are taking place, and I think probably before we get to 40 jobs, we should have decided on that.
Yep.
So it's not just an excuse to wear a cool outfit on stage.
ステージでクールなコスプレをする理由にはなる。
もうね、コスプレも辛いんですよ、本当に。
He's gonna say.
Oh, but you know what? The cosplay is getting tough, really.
It was beautiful.
It was awesome. He says thanks. It was awesome. Dude, Yoshi-P in the Viper cosplay was sick. I hope he never stops doing that. We all wanted him to cosplay Picto as well, but he was a little peepo shy. He was a little shy.
One thing I noticed with both the Pictomancer and the Viper, especially you're reducing button bloat this time with a lot of the classes. Do you find to cater to a new player that glowing and sound effects allow you to make very complex classes, but if you follow the guide, you'll get 90% of its effectiveness, and then it's just the 10% who want to min-max their performance?
ピクトマンサー、バイパーについてプレイしてみて、確かに
This is an interesting question.
非常に複雑な工程を経ているというものになりました。で、新しいプレイヤーに向けて、複雑さが増していくにつれて、例えば、いわゆるこのボタンが光るとか、エフェクトが出て、そしたらこれを押せとかいうような、ゲームの中でそのスキルをどんどん向上していくような仕組みっていう。
Optimizing for Picto seems like it's going to be pretty galaxy brain, but maybe I'm wrong. That's just what I feel like.
正直すごい悩んでます。
Honestly speaking, I'm extremely torn.
少なくとも、今やっぱり優
He
先
said
的
he's
に考えるべき
extremely
はレベル
torn
キャップに
about
到
that.
達するまでは僕もう気軽に自由に遊んでもらった方がいいとはっているので、途中でなんかこれ以上ごちゃごちゃ言うのはまだいいかなとは思ってます。
I think at the very least, what we would want to prioritize is that players can just feel at ease while they're playing their job, at least until they reach the level cap. So I wouldn't want a situation where things get messy halfway through.
ただレベルキャップに到達した時にそもそもアクションスキルのローテーションとは何か、そしてどうローテーションすると効率よくなるのか、それをやっぱりちゃんと DPS のジョブにはどっかで習うタイミングが必要なんじゃないかっていうのは今思ってます。
But I think once players have reached the level cap, they would be thinking what sort of actions would they need to be carrying out, and what sort of how would their skill rotations look? What would be an efficient skill rotation? I think there should be some sort of something to teach DPS players these aspects about their job.
逆にタンクロールをプレイしているプレイヤーに
Let me go back a
は
second. I
せめ
didn't
て
I think there should be some sort.
What?
But I think once players have reached the level cap, they would be thinking what sort of actions would they need to be carrying out, and what sort of how would their skill rotations look? What would be an efficient skill rotation?
Yes.
I think there should be some sort of something to teach DPS players these aspects about their job.
There should be something to teach as you learn more about your job, meaning there's value in depth. That is what I've learned from Pictomancer, from studying Picto.
逆にタンクロールをプレイしているプレイヤーには
Only
せめて
DPS? Yeah, that's true. Why did he say only DPS players? What the
あ
hell?
のメインタンクとオフタンクがいるので、タンクをスイッチするプレイって
Good
ど
catch.
ういう時に必要になるのかとか、スイッチするにはどうしたらいいのかぐらいは知識として持っておいてもらってもいいだろうな。
Well, maybe he just has DPS on the mind because of Viper and Picto. And the question was about Viper and Picto, so that's probably why.
And I think in the example of tank players,
Okay.
we
Tank.
could kind of inform tank players about, since we have the main tank and the sub-tank, when would they be
the sub tanks. We have the Dom tank and
tank
the
switching, and in what sort of situation would the tank switch happen?
Sometimes you need to switch.
This sort of information should be provided.
そしてさらにそれをシステマチックにやろうとした場合、今まさに例に挙げてくれたように、このアクション実行したなら次これを押すといいよ、これをやったなら次これがいいよってシステムで全部解説していくっていうのが
I'm sorry.
確かに分かりやすいとは思う。
Very peculiar terminology, Zepla.
And so if we thought about
Well, there's
incorporating...
the tank who's dominantly tanking the boss is what I meant. The one who's predominantly doing that. Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
that in a systematic way, it could be the way that you explained, so that when you press this action,
So
something
Dom for
happens
short.
and it leads you on to press the other action, and this would be easy to understand.
ただ本当にゲームとしてそれでいいのかっていう思いと、またカジュアルにするのかっていう人たちもいるので、すごい悩ましい。
So, on the other hand, I think, would it really be okay to do this as a game? And also, there's the chance that people would say, hey, you're making it casual again.
すごい悩ましい。
So, I'm really torn.
どう思います？あった方がいいと思いますか？そろそろ。
But how do you feel? Do you think it should be there?
I think a good MMO class, a job, should always be accessible up to a very high level. And then there's some room for the really dedicated players to push forward.
Based AF.
But not
Mike. So based.
100% better.
個人的にはまあ
So
ある程度のところまではそうい
real
った
and correct.
ガイドみたいなのがあればいいかなと思います。で、本当に頂点に達したときにはまあ 10% ぐらいですけど、工夫の余地というか、さらにそれを展開していく。
That's why Black Mage is such a good job.
はいはい。
Because it always has done that.
それが良いジョブだと思う。
まあすごいヒントと、まあある意味ディスカッションの機会をもらったので、まあ今まさにちょうどそのさっきも言いましたけど、コンバットチーム中心に今後どうしていくかの大きな方針というのを固めようとしているタイミングなので、持ち帰ってさらにディスカッションを進めようと思います。
But thanks to this discussion, I've gained some hints about what we could do, and this is a good opportunity for discussion. So, as I mentioned, we are currently discussing the possibilities with the combat team, and we're currently working on solidifying our plan. So, I'll definitely take this information back with me, and we can consider it together.
Wow.
Super. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately, but I want to
Cool.
thank
No,
you
we're
very
out of
much
time.
for this. If I can have one little personal question. I asked you at FanFest if we would see chat bubbles in the future.
Chat bubbles.
And you said yes.
This is so funny.
時間なので
God.
最後にファンフェスで伺ったチャットバ
Critically
ブルの件、確かあの時はイエスって言ってたと思う。
For the stage plays.
For the plays.
テストのサンプルの作成はやってます。もう実はすでに。
Actually, we've already prepared samples for testing.
この一言だけで多分世界中に衝撃が走るので、ここまでにしといてもらっていい？
We did it. We
I
did
think
it.
just this utterance alone has sent shockwaves throughout the world. So let's leave it here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nuki.
今度はぜひ食事をしながらワインを飲みつつ、もっと長い時間ぜひディスカッションさせてください。
I think next time, definitely, let's go out for a meal, drink some wine, and have a discussion then.
I would love that.
はい、もちろんです。ありがとうございます。
Yeah.
Of course.
Go drink
People
some
again.
wine with Yoshi-P so that he can tell you what the next expansion is
Welcome.
going to be about. I'd be like, all right, Yoshi-P, hear me out. Hear me out. What if, now this is just an if, but what if we added another game mode where you can take a character for a date? Okay, so like, have you played a dating sim, Yoshi-P? Yoshi-P, can I put Aaronville in my island sanctuary? I like hangouts. Oops, all bun boys. So here's my idea for the next expansion. Everybody, like it rains Fantasia, but only on the characters that are not bunnies. Right? Okay, and they can't solve the problem at all. No one can figure out how to solve it. So everyone just has to deal with being a bunny. Yeah. Meanwhile, all of the already bunnies are at the bunny convention, which is indoors. And so, who let her cook? Anyways, this was an absolutely phenomenal interview. I cannot believe, well, I can believe because Yoshi-P, he loves talking to players and you can see how much he enjoys this conversation throughout. But I loved how candid and honest he was about, like, especially this part about why they have been careful of changes, why, like some of the regrets that he's had, like some of his the reasons why he felt like the dev team sometimes went too far, and why they want to let go of fear whenever they design content going forward. This is honestly a gem of an interview, and Mike asked a ton of really, really excellent, compelling questions. We got interesting answers about. So 10 out of 10 interview. I'm really glad Mike got it.